Yeah, so I was having I'm glad that we're having this conversation now, because I was having this strange experience over the last few days, which felt very much like this underworldy kind of awakening from below kind of feeling of old emotions coming forward, and then at first me resisting them, and then going into a place where it's like, no, I'm just going to allow these to completely be here. And then finding that the emotions themselves like become almost like the fuel for this intensification of presence and awakening. But then like things started happening related to my ancestry and like my family, where like I hadn't been in touch with my dad for ages. Like we haven't had much of a relationship throughout my life. But he was a famous criminal lawyer in the UK, famous for this one case in particular involving a serial killer. And I think I'd been thinking about him, and then I went on Netflix, and the first thing that pops up being advertised is a new documentary about that case. So like I just like message him, and then he messages back, and we just like have a brief exchange. And I just like got this sense of like pride in him, like, because this was a really horrific case. And just felt very in tune with like what he's been going through, and feel very in tune with it now, and feel emotional talking about it. And then I was thinking, I haven't spoken to my mum in ages, like I should give her a call. And then she messages me and she's like, we haven't spoken in ages, like you should give me a call. And so I call her, we have a really nice conversation. And then today I go on Netflix, and there's this thing about the Blitz. And I was just watching it just before getting on the call, and it was really hitting me hard in a way like I haven't experienced really. Like I would only ever watch things about the Blitz, and it would be like these really grainy old film, and it seemed somehow like it happened a million years ago. But they've like upscaled all of the film, so it looks like it's real, you know, and it just felt incredibly real. And I'm like in Berlin, I live in the center of Berlin, you know, you can almost see the Reichstag from my building. And I'm like, I don't know, the weight of all of that ancestral energy is just like moving through me so strongly right now.
Yeah. And then, so did you find a way to to work with it, or just sit with it, or like how are you?
I mean, I'm doing that right now. Like
Yeah.
that's like, because it's so literally, I was just watching it like just now, and there was a part of me like, oh, we're going to get on this conversation, I should probably turn this off because it's going to make me start like crying. Like I could feel it building all this stuff up. But then I was like, well, this is kind of perfect actually that this is happening, because this is exactly what we're talking about. So maybe I should just let this happen, and we can talk about it in real time. Like it's literally happening to me right now. I can, you know, I've got enough awareness and familiarity with this kind of work to be able to articulate like what's happening.
Yeah.
Maybe through us talking about it, you know, it'll give like a real world example for people.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I think what you're talking about is commonly dismissed in mainstream spiritual circles as being some conditioning that you need to work through, right? As if this material isn't itself awakened as if this material itself wasn't sacred, as if this material itself was a distraction from the real awakening, which is, you know, bliss
Yeah.
and love and awareness and so on and so forth, right? Transcendence, upward, above, you know, as if the below was somehow, you know, just some crap that needs to be cleaned out. You know, and you and I both know that when you orient towards the below in a different kind of way and embrace it, its sacred nature, and embrace its, you know, really embrace its message, really feel and hear and experience it. That you know, it's its own form of awakening. It's its own form of awakened being. Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
What do you like? What when you're experiencing this in your body? Like, what do you actually like feeling in your body? Is it this weight
Yeah,
that you're talking about? Yeah. What does it feel like?
it feels, it's like the ground beneath me is more open, which is a feeling that I'm familiar with, you know, and like it
Like
basically what it
in a
feels like.
scary way, like it's gonna swallow you up, kind of ground opening,
No,
or
no,
what do you
not
mean?
like, I think if I was less familiar with it, it might have that quality. But because I am familiar with it enough, like this is a comfortable and familiar place for me. It feels more like what it feels like is like the weight of that ancestral memory is stored like in energy within my body and within the earth herself, and that there's like a reconnection happening that feels like magnetic, like in my body, like like my body's being pulled down into the earth, and it's meeting that other polarity of this like earthly energy, which I'm realizing obviously is very strongly connected to literally the land that I am stood on, well, that I'm sat on right now,
Yeah.
right in Berlin, you know. And it feels like my consciousness is touching the unresolved unconscious wounds of those times. And in doing that, there's like this alleviation of pressure. Like feels, it's a hard thing to describe, but it almost feels like this like rays of light rising up out of the center of the earth, like into my body, that I can feel is oh, what's the word? Like redemption, you know, like something like angelic. It feels like that. Feels kind of celestial and light.
Yeah. Um, so let's, well, I mean, the way I'm feeling is that people might misunderstand what you're saying as something like, bringing up the pain and the horrors of you know that are stored in the earth, and like filtering them or purifying them to arrive to transcend them and arrive at a place of light. But what I hear you saying is different than that, and what the way I experience it also is different than that. It's the it's the sacred nature of the pain itself, of the horror itself. It's not that we go down and we clear it all out so that the light can shine forth. It's it's the sacred nature of the wound itself, right? The wound is itself in some way the source of the light that you're talking about.
Yeah, like the Divine Mother, like it feels very earthy, like in that polar opposite way, like that we talk about with ascension and descension. It's like the material version of that divinity. Yeah, and it's funny, like, because I don't feel like I need to do anything with it. Like I feel, and I know you relate to this, like it's hard to put these things into words, but like I feel like there's been more and more movement into not needing to do things, like, and not needing to understand things.
Yeah.
So when these kinds of things come up, I might be able to articulate it in a way that makes it sound like I'm doing it. But for me, I just feel like I'm in a way being taken. And I just allow myself to be taken, like, by whatever this is. And then it has its own rhythm.
Yeah. In my book, I wrote a line that was something like just allowing it to eviscerate you, right?
Yeah.
Like going down into the dark to understand it is a kind of dissociation from it, right? You're going down and you're like, I'm gonna clear this out. I'm gonna filter this. I'm gonna turn this into light, or I'm gonna understand this, or I'm gonna, all the plans that I'm gonna do with the darkness, right? Or with these energies, with the below, all my plans about how I'm gonna deal with it, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, we're talking about something different, like a surrendering, allowing it to really like tear you apart, allowing it to really, um, yeah, overwhelm, allowing it to swallow you up. Not fighting that, not thinking that you're the one that's going to be able to come up with strategies and that you're the savior here to solve problem of the below, right? Jack, you gonna fix the whole World War II trauma? Can you filter it out for the whole world, right? And be the grand healer that's gonna bring the balance back to the earth, right?
I remember when I first moved to Berlin, I thought something like that. Like, I remember thinking, oh, I've probably been brought here like because my body's really in tune with the flows of energy of the earth, so I can help, I don't know, heal some of the wounds that exist here in Berlin, like with everything that's happened. And I remember very shortly after arriving here, a friend of mine took me to this place called Mauerpark. I think I told you about this. And Mauerpark, Mauer means wall. So Mauerpark is the park where the wall used to be. It used to be no man's land. Like, you walk through that area, you would be shot. And now it's a park, and you can see bits of the wall, like, in it. And I went there on this like sunny day, and it was just like a mini festival. Like, every Sunday they would just have like a mini festival at Mauerpark, and there'd be thousands of people there. And there was this huge thing where they were doing karaoke, and everyone was just like laughing and singing and having a good time. And musicians can come there, and like, you don't need a permit or anything. You just like take your guitar or whatever you have and you just play. And it's just got this really free, happy energy. And I remember just seeing these kids like in the back of a little cart that was attached to this guy's bike. And he was just cycling around, and these kids were just like laughing. And I just started crying because I was like, oh man, I don't need to do anything. Like, they've already done it. They're doing it all the time. Like, look at this place. So yeah, it's funny that like we can get these ideas in our heads, like we're the one who's supposed to do it. And at the same time, something definitely is moving through me right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is or why it's doing it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, there's something about surrendering into the experience of the weight of above, the below, these kinds of experiences that you're talking about, just surrendering into them and not and just releasing the agendas and the plans about how I'm going to do this and that and the other, and just finding a way to sit with the sensations, with the feelings, with the emotions, finding a way to just sit with them and allow them to come up, first of all, because that can be overwhelming and scary. Allow them to come in, allow them to flow through your body, take over your body, overwhelm you, and not try to dissociate or understand or solve the problem, or somehow retreat to the above, right? To transform it into love, or to air purifier this stuff away, or any all of those agendas, to just put them on hold and just really just allow the pain and the suffering to be there fully, and to sit in that without an agenda. And somehow it's not that you become the savior of the world, but somehow that material sitting in you brings out some transformations, in you, and in how you relate to, how you relate to pain, how you relate to suffering, how you relate to humanity. And then you find, I feel I find some kind of redemption and sacredness in the brokenness of
Absolutely.
of humanity, in the brokenness of Earth.
Yeah.
Not having to change it, but just
Exactly.
really recognizing it and feeling it and becoming it. That there is a kind of a redemption there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels very honest. And there's something about that honesty that, for me, it just feels like relief, like moving through my whole system, And I don't know if this is similar for you, but what I've noticed over these past few days, and I think it's probably a pattern, is that there can be like an unconscious buildup over time where I'm not quite aware that kind of something's coming, like something is kind of starting to bubble up. And I just noticed it the last few days of feeling quite tense, and not really having a reason as to why. And today it feels like it's kind of revealed itself, like, I guess in that way it's similar. It's kind of volcanic. Those movements of energy, is that kind of similar for you, or is it different for you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's rumblings, subterranean rumblings that are mysterious, and you're not quite sure what's coming, and then suddenly, it all clicks together into a coherent picture. And often for me, those moments of kind of clicking together into a coherent picture, there's often sort of like a time bending that takes place, where it's not only the buildup from the last couple of days or weeks that comes into focus. Oh, that's what this was leading to. But often there are these deep time connections as well. Like in this case for you, it's ancestral, and that stuff is all it is emerging simultaneously. You have sort of the connection with your father, the connection with your mother, and also, connection with your ancestors who, participated in World War II, and then this connection with the location, and you happen to be living there, and it's all sort of like this configuration snapping into place from like all across different time scales, all sort of coming together in this one moment, and you can just feel all of the time scales in this emotion right now.
Exactly.
Things like that happen, where it's sort of like you see like the trajectory of your life and your ancestors' lives, and everything sort of like aligning in a moment, not some grand sort of like, oh, everything makes sense now sort of thing, but maybe that can happen, but also just sort of like on a smaller scale, just like, oh, I see all of these trajectories sort of, coming together in this moment, and some things that seemed to be unconnected, I see their deep connections, their subterranean connections that I was never aware of before.
For me right now, it feels like I'm so close to those people. Like that's what's making me emotional. Like I feel like they're like my brothers and sisters. I feel so close to these people that I was just watching in this Blitz documentary. It's like they're right here, right now. Like we're so close. And and there's something really moving about that. I think especially in the modern world where there's so much of a sense of disconnection from one another, like to feel that really deep connection with people, even if they're ancestral, I'm never going to physically meet these people, but I feel a very deep connection with them in this moment, a real tenderness for the experience of life. And for me, like I've spent a lot of time judging that generation because I felt they passed a lot of trauma on, which is then I've blamed that for a lot of the suffering I've had in my life. My granddad was a prisoner of war for 3 years. Then when he came back, he was an alcoholic, and was violent towards my mom, and then my mom was violent towards me, and like I can see this like chain, and I've been fixated on that at various points. But in this moment, all I have is just this incredibly a sense of closeness to them and tenderness, where the idea of blaming them for going through that experience seems completely insane.
Yeah, there you go. That's the kind of redemption, that can come out of this configuration of all of these aspects coming together in the moment, and then they reveal the deep subterranean connections between all of these things. And so you're what you just articulated, you're combining ancestral trauma, the trauma of the land and the country and the space and the place that you're in, your own traumatic upbringing, your own relationship with the place that you live right now, right? All sort of like snapping together in alignment, and then sitting with that pain, sitting with those burdens, finding that, not because you're trying to clear it out and trying to turn it into something, you're not trying to heal it, but by sitting in it and feeling it and allowing it to come forward and reveal itself, then you find the redemption in that. Right? The redemption is, for me, in my experience, redemption always comes down to some form of love. That there's always some form of understanding and love at the bottom of it.
Yeah.
This is kind of intimacy that you're talking about. This kind of connection that you're talking about. Reconnecting with the things that we've pushed away, reconnecting with the things that we've rejected, reconnecting with the parts of ourselves that we have refused to acknowledge, or the parts of our
it feels like that, like this, like a returning to wholeness, like, and I'm not trying to make it that, like, and I think that's an important point and it kind of links to some of the things you were saying before, where it's like, I'm not going into this with like an agenda, and I'm not trying to fix something. Like, it's just happening. But it's like it doesn't feel negative. Like what's happening right now doesn't feel negative. It actually feels incredibly beautiful. Like, and I feel like words like sacred get really overused, but like it feels sacred. And as you say, like, you help me see that with the way you described it, like of these, the way it bends time, because it feels like all of these different timelines and experiences that happen at different points in space and time, like converging, which gives a sense of completeness and the kind of like okayness with everything. Like everything's completely fine. Like I was actually feeling much worse before this.
Yeah.
Like now that it's like really surfacing, it's like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know, there's like a sense of the kind of plan within everything, which makes me feel quite safe, actually.
Yeah. 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 But if you had decided that that's what you wanted to do from the beginning, and you had gone into this and said, I'm going to find the sacred nature of this and how it's all connected together. And you went in with that kind of like mental agenda and started imposing your interpretation on things, mentally, with the goal of, transforming it all into light and redemption. That's a recipe for just spiritually bypassing this whole thing that we're talking about. Because you're turning it into, you're imposing an agenda onto it. You're imposing your will onto it. It becomes an ego project. And it's just so critical that you have to suspend you can hope, you can trust that there's some order and some sense, some redemption to be had here, but you have to suspend your mental process and imposing your will onto these things, and you have to really go in and just allow that redemption to come up from the bottom, to bubble up in its own way. And it'll always be surprising. If you had started out by saying, oh, I think it means this and I think it means that, you wouldn't have arrived at the place that you are now. It's because you just sort of let go of trying to impose your will on this, and you allow it to autonomously, liberate itself to come up from the below and have its own agenda, the below has its own agenda, and you allow it to teach you, it to show you where the redemption is. That's what allows you to actually find it.
Yeah, I think it's probably true for you as well. Like, but I get even that isn't something that I chose. I think I probably, I think there's reasons why a lot of the dark feminine deities are shown like decapitating men, because they will humble you, and it's for your own good, but they're very good at doing that. And I think that's kind of where I'm able to have that humility, because it's not, I remember Adyashanti saying something about this, where people asked him what his secret was or something, how did he do it and get to this great state, and he was just like, I failed. And I remember when I first heard that, I did not understand or resonate with that. I was like, I'm not in this to fail. But I understand what he means more these days. It's like you accept that you aren't going to be the one that figures this out. And the phrase that's been coming up for me recently is like, this isn't my awakening. Like I started realizing like how much my mind will try and micromanage my awakening, you know, and get everything in the right place. And this phrase just started coming up for me, and it was like, this isn't my awakening, this is God's awakening. Mm-hmm. And there's something in it that just like, just feels so much nicer. Like, I don't have to be the one who's controlling this thing, mm-hmm. you know? And I think these moments of like the underworld surging up, it kind of, it takes away that illusion of control, because it makes it viscerally clear that you're not in control. Yeah. And then you've only got one choice. Like you've got to surrender to this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And I'm thinking that your way into this particular cluster of ancestral, personal, and national, historical, cultural, earth-based tangle of trauma that you're finding. I mean, your way into it today was through a series of coincidences or synchronicities, right? With involved Netflix, it involved, you know, text with your mom, whatever ways those, you know, those entry points came together and pointed you towards this. You know, those entry points were what happened to arise. There could have been other entry points. You know, there could have been other doors into this tangle. Maybe you've been presented with those doors in the past and ignored them, or didn't, you know, they didn't follow up on the invitation. You know, maybe other doors could have opened that would have invited you in, and you know, and it didn't have to be these particular details. And you know, so I think the message there is, you know, that you are constantly being invited in, you know, through all sorts of events in your life, through all sorts of moments. They're all kind of portals into this, into the below in different ways. If you're willing to listen, and if you're willing to kind of take up the invitation, you know, there's invitations being sent your way constantly, and any one of these invitations, if you pick it up, you know, you could, you know, find yourself having this deeper intimacy, this deeper kind of connection with the subterranean layers of, you know, of reality. You could be having those kinds of that kind of depth in your experience, you know, constantly, because it's constantly inviting you into that relationship.
And I think there's something interesting there of like I don't know how much you knew about the whole descended movement, like before it began for you, but the impression that I get is that like it came as quite a shock, and it was similar for me. And so neither of us really planned that, you know, that just kind of came about, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking of everyone listening, and because us talking about this might create a pressure within some people, like they need to manufacture this. And yet you know, what you've already spoken about, like if you go into this conceptually with the idea that this is what's supposed to happen, then you're gonna probably be disappointed, and it probably won't turn out that way. And it's it's one of those risks, I guess, with us even like having this conversation, because we're describing things which have happened to us spontaneously most of the time. And I guess as I say these words, one of the things that I sort of smile to myself about is like, I know that the right people will hear this. Like, it just feels very present, that feeling. Because sometimes we just hear something at the right time, and even if intellectually it doesn't make that much sense, there's the energy beneath it which does. And I know that will always, do the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm thinking about, if I'm thinking about people listening to this and, wondering, wanting to take up the invitation and wondering how to do so. I would not advocate something like, oh, I'm gonna, go to a place where there's a lot of trauma in the land, and I'm going to invite it into me, and I'm going to sit in that space. And that's a very kind of planned out, egoic kind of agenda driven way to approach this. I mean, my starting point advice would be for somebody to just take the pain that they're actually experiencing, the suffering that they're actually experiencing in their life right now. And, rather than approaching spirituality as a path for transcending that suffering and escaping it, changing the narrative there and saying, there's this particular trauma, this particular pain point, this particular, situation, this particular suffering that I'm experiencing or that I have experienced. And I would like to be invited into a deeper relationship with that. And I would start right there rather than going to find some other trauma to sink into, right? Start with what's actually there.
I think that's good advice. And that, like that the secret agendas that we have, like when we enter into spiritual work, like that's where like we need to be really honest with ourselves, like, and open to the possibility, like, of why are we doing things? Like, are we secretly trying to escape? Like, there's so much of that in the spiritual scene. Like, there's so many different ways that it gets talked about. And I feel like a lot of people who talk about ascension are talking about escaping from the suffering of the world. And I don't think it's going to help that way of thinking about it. There's something just like so clean about not doing that. And like really being here. Like I was going to say being here now, and then it made me think of like Ram Dass and like Eckhart Tolle and people. And I think sometimes when those phrases get thrown around, like be here now or just be or whatever, it's almost got this kind of just be, but in a way that is separated from suffering. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like just be, but don't be suffering. It's like there's this strange disconnection within it. And it's like being here now, like to me, that's more like those images of Christ, like with his heart, where he's like heart's ripped open and there's daggers in his heart.
Yeah. It was funny you mentioned Christ, because I was just having an image as well of, all of the heroes that people tend to hold up as paragons or exemplars of spirituality. We have figures like the Buddha and Ramana Maharshi and others who are, who are very much, the message is about transcending of suffering. It's like all of Buddhism is organized around the Four Noble Truths, right? The escape from suffering is just kind of the core doctrine of that whole tradition. And I do think that Christ offers a different model, a different archetype or exemplar, in the way that the tradition anyway has really focused on his suffering. He ultimately transcends and goes up into the heavens, right? And in the resurrection, but there's a lot of attention given to his pain and his anguish as he's tortured to death. And then the symbol of the tradition, right? The crucifix is the wounded, dying Jesus, not the resurrected Jesus. So, obviously there's images of resurrection as well, but the crucifix is just a really central image, and there's within that tradition, I think there's some wisdom in that symbol, that Christ offers kind of a different model that's not so transcendent focused.
Yeah, I feel like he's so human. Like, you'd know more about this than I do, but when I look at the major religions, he's the one who seems the most human of all of the leading figures. Like, I think we can relate to him. Like, when he got angry and he threw over the tables, like, I think about that often, and like, I love him for that. And I love that was recorded, because I think a lot of that stuff could easily get filtered out, and it's something that is one of my kind of, one of these things that I kind of hate, but I think I also love hating. It's like the kind of misrepresentation of spiritually awakening people and people who are very spiritually awake, like, and often the dehumanization of very spiritually awake people, like, which plays into some kind of, well, it's an egoic fantasy about escaping suffering, isn't it? It's like, if I can kind of aspire to be like this figure who isn't human or isn't affected by the things that trouble me in my daily life, then there's something to kind of hunt after, an illusion to chase.
Yeah.
But what if Jesus was really evolved because he was actually so at peace with his humanity that he was willing to allow his humanity to express itself in ways that put him in very difficult situations? Like, that guy was not afraid of conflict, or if he was, like, he moved through that fear pretty smoothly. And he did some bold things, like the Pharisees were preaching and he just like walked up to the preachers and like preached, like, just kind of like, I don't believe what you guys are saying. This is the truth, like, I don't know. There's like that's not a timid guy. That's not, I don't know. There's something about it which I just really love.
Yeah.
But I think for me, that's something connected to the below as well. Like, it's more wild. And like, when you're more at peace with the energies that flow through there, then you're more at peace with like the wildness within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're more free to be yourself. You're more free to be human. Which I think is why, like, quite a while ago, I stopped putting like enlightenment at like as like the pinnacle of spiritual awakening. And I just felt like if I can just be human, then I've done it. You know, if I can just be human, which obviously I mean like to be myself as fully as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the kind of the integration of the below kind of back up into the middle. I have this notion of the middle, right, where it's just sort of like daily life, everyday activities, kind of just the normal to and fro of, you know, society and so forth. And I think a skillful engagement with spirituality, either above or below, is only it's only skillful if it's being incorporated or integrated back into the middle, so that, you know, I'm, you know, amazing mystical experiences that involve all kinds of, you know, openings and love and bliss and emptiness and all these kinds of above flavors are kind of what everybody's focused on YouTube, right? That's sort of in the spiritual, you know, YouTube channels. That's kind of what everybody's focused on, is telling their stories about these amazing opening experiences. But for me, it's really about, well, how does that come back down into the everyday and get played out in the human scale, in the human realm? And I would say there's something about that with the below too. For me, the kinds of experiences that you can have in the below can be equally dramatic. You can be, you know, having all sorts of visions, all sorts of, like, you know, interactions with you know, earth spirits, and have all kinds of energetic, you know, events and so on and so forth. And describing those are, you know, they're fun, they're interesting, but the real measure for me of below base spirituality would also be, how does that come back? How does that flow back into the middle, into the human, into the everyday? So the goal isn't to become some kind of, like, you know, it's not to become some kind of transcendent hero that's above all humans, but it's also not to become some kind of, like, you know, mystical being in the below that is, you know, transcending the human condition. For me, it's all about the how these spiritual experiences get, you know, are integrated into our daily activities and play out just in our, you know, in our interactions with the barista at the coffee shop, or in our, you know, in our workplace, in our families.
Yeah, because that escapism can go the other way. You're right. And I noticed that, like, with the channelings that I do, like if I'm doing interviews where I, like, channel a dragon that I'm connected with, and then sometimes I'll look through the comments, and I notice people that I feel are, like, over-identifying with the dragon, and they'll be like, I am a dragon, and I'm like, I mean, like, in my experience, when I'm opening up to those beings, like, I can sense that we are the same being. So I could say something like, I am that dragon, and there's a truth in that. But that's something I almost never say, because I'm aware of how, like, escapist and ungrounded that is. Like, you can go off into an egoic, delusional fantasy, and then it's an escapism from below, like, instead of that ascended one.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a little game that I play sometimes, you know, to is to just listen to where people are placing the identity, because you know, a lot of spirituality is just a game. It's just an ego game. It's a game of taking the identity off of the individual narrative self, the separate self, the story that, but everybody wants to place that identity in a different place, so that they start saying, "Oh, I am awareness," or "I am the dragon," or "I am God," or "I am this," "I am that," "I am the other." Right? Having a just it's just playing a game, taking that identity and sticking it onto different things. It's an ego game. It's a ego inflation. It's an ego driven spiritual path, to be doing that kind of thing. To me, true spirituality is the annihilation of the ego. It's either annihilated into emptiness and love and divinity and God, or the ego is annihilated into the underworld, into the dark goddess, into the soul of the earth, into the the deepest realms of the darkness. The ego is swallowed up in an abyss. For me, that's true spirituality. And then when you come out from that, I am this, that, or the other. It's just a game. It's just nonsense. Sure, just for everyday purposes, I can say what my name is. I can say, I'm male, I live at this address, and so on and so forth. I mean, there's no problem. There's no problem having an identity when you need one. But really believing, I am X, Y, or Z, I think is a pretty shallow end of the spiritual ocean, in my view.
This, how do you feel about in the Bible when Moses had the conversation with God at Mount Sinai? It said that God said to him, "I am that I am," and I feel like there's this. I feel like even the "I am" is ego, and I'm just kind of curious of your take on that, because to me, I feel like that's the core of it, and that there's something beyond that. And I wonder if that resonates with you, or if you have a different perspective.
Yeah. I don't know very much about, Western spiritual tradition, and I don't know very much about the Bible. And I think probably that phrase probably means something different in Hebrew or whatever language it was written in than what I'm hearing with my English language ears. But yeah, the way I'm hearing it with my English language ears, it does sound like the kind of identity game that I was talking about a minute ago. I am consciousness, I am the one, I am the absolute, I am that I am that I'm not, right? That would be it's all kind of the same to me. It's all looking for a place to put identity, and trying to put it into larger and larger or more and more spiritual locations. And some of that can happen quite naturally. I mean, for me, and I know for you as well, as we have gone through spiritual experiences, as the identity becomes more loose and more kind of flexible, I definitely found my identity sort of sticking itself in different places. I am the void, I am the goddess, I am this, that, and the other. So arising naturally in a spiritual process, having the destabilization of the identity, and it fluctuates around to some different things. I think that's pretty natural. So it's not a problem per se, but a lot of spirituality is just playing games with that, trying to convince yourself through kind of mental exercises or through different kinds of, you know, community, you're joining a community and you're wearing certain kinds of clothing, or you're, you know, and you're doing certain kinds of practices and so forth. And then you're sort of like making choices to put your identity in a certain place and kind of construct a whole worldview around that and start using language, you know, differently in order to sort of express your new identity. And it just becomes, the whole thing just becomes I think it's just a game.
Yeah, I haven't hung around with groups like that for quite a while, but I remember groups like that. And when I hear people talking like that now, I find it actually very difficult to be around groups or people like that, because, you know, it's like, where do you even begin? It's so hard to have a conversation with people like that sometimes. And there's an irony with it, which kind of reveals its egoic foundations, like that the people can get very defensive about those kind of spiritual identities. And I notice that in myself too. Like I feel like for me, it's kind of moving around those different things, and it feels more for myself as in a process of loosening rather than total dissolution with that egoic structure. And like the need to control it has reduced a lot. Like I don't feel so much like there's anything wrong with it, you know, like you were saying before. It's like there's nothing wrong with it trying on these different things. Like that's something I feel comfortable with it doing. But it feels sometimes we get stuck. You know, I can get stuck in places. I can get touchy and defensive. I remember, who was it who said this? I can't quite remember. Oh, I think it was Ram Dass. He said something like, if you think you're enlightened, spend a week with your parents or something. Or no, wait, I was actually thinking of something else. It was like, if you want to know how enlightened somebody is, you ask their partner. Like, ask their partner what they're actually like, you know. And I always think of that. I'm like, I'll think about Lola and be like, you know, she gets to see all the messiest parts of me, like me at my most triggered. And I try to be open about that in my videos, but I can only be so open about it. And strangely, sometimes people react quite negatively to that. But what I'm trying to do is like reveal my humanity so that it's obvious that I'm not some, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to de-pedestal myself, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And also setting some realistic expectations for, you know, anybody who's watching, you know, your material, or anybody who's listening to this material, because we're not talking about a spirituality that is aimed towards becoming some kind of perfected being that only ever exudes light out of its pores and only ever, you know, is perfect in every way. That to me, that's the fantasy of the above-based spirituality, would be that one could ever actually accomplish that is, I think, a fantasy, a myth. We have our mythological figures, you know, the Buddha and so forth, who supposedly were like that. These are mythologies. And then when we have real life spiritual teachers, we assume that they must be at that level of perfection, and then we consider them to be infallible gurus, and they often turn out to be quite fallible, quite human, have all sorts of problems, right? I think we talked about that before. But this kind of spirituality that we're talking about is not about transcending the human. It's not about trying to be some perfected being. It's about being the silly little broken, you know, stupid, limited human that you are. Right? But just to be like fully embodied and fully connected and fully open to the full spectrum of humanity and full spectrum of human experience, and to really be present for that. Um, that's just a different goal altogether, right? It's a different direction altogether. Yeah, so it's good to depedestalize yourself, but also depedestalize this whole endeavor, right? It's not about perfection. If anything, it's about authenticity. It's about just really actually being human, and stop trying to be something else.
Definitely. Like, the word just comes to me so often, but it's just honesty. Just honesty. Like, and I remember, like, Nisargadatta was said to, like, someone asked him, like, what was the one quality that people need in order to attain enlightenment? And he said, honesty. And I didn't get it. And it's just becoming more and more obvious. Like, and it's like, you don't have to be anything other than what you are. And then there's something so beautifully ordinary about that. Like, what a relief. Like, it goes against all that societal conditioning about you have to try and attain some kind of perfection, and you have to try and force yourself to be this thing. Like, what a relief to realize, like, that all you have to be is just, like, exactly what you are.
Yeah.
And seeing that honestly is, like, that's all you have to do.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, this has been a wonderful chat.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This was fun.
Yeah. No, thank you. I feel in a very good place. And it's funny, like, the heaviness hasn't gone. Like, it's still here, and, like, I still feel raw, but it doesn't. There's no problem with that at all.
Of course, rawness and heaviness are part of the human experience, right? There's no need to aim towards a life where I would be protected from ever feeling raw. Right? And the idea that there is a state that I can get to, you know, where I would never experience rawness ever again, it's the fantasy of the above, right? It's a form of bypassing this whole human experience. There's nothing wrong with being raw. That's a feature. It's a natural feature of human existence. And you should feel raw in the face of a massive, catastrophic legacy of suffering. Why wouldn't you feel raw?
Yeah, for
in
sure.
the face of millions of people being killed on the land that you're standing on, and your ancestors being part of that, and picking up a chain reaction of trauma that affected you deeply as a child. Like, how could you not be raw about that? What kind of escapist fantasy would tell you that you should just rise above that and transcend, right?
But they do tell you exactly that.
They do.
It's mad. Oh man. Well, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to our next chat.
Yeah, thank you, Jack.